had your time. You had the power. You've yet to have your finest hour. Radio. All we hear is Radio Gaga. All we hear is Radio Goo Goo. Radio, what's new? Someone still loves you. Hang on a second, I can't take any credit for those lyrics. Those lines were written by Roger Taylor, drummer for the legendary rock band called Queen, way back in 1984. The flamboyant lead singer of Queen subsequently turned around and said, video had just come in, TV had just come in 1984, and we were wondering what's going to happen with radio. We were all insecure, and that lyric made a lot of sense. I tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, 41 years later, the same question has come up again. The so-called threat, or the opponent, is not pure video or television, it's streaming platforms. There are still those of us who believe that radio is yet to have its finest hour. But as radio adapted itself, surged ahead, faced the competition with precision and speed, I say to the naysayers, I told you so. Let me explain myself. Post the pandemic, car sales went up. And that's not me saying that. That's Autocar India magazine, and I quote from them. Why did car sales go up? Because there was paranoia. A lot of people who would take public transport, which is buses and trains, suddenly said, hey, I might get a disease. So it's better that I'm isolated within the cabin of a brand new car. I'd rather take a larger loan and get myself that car. What happens with more cars? There are more radio sets. And chances are, and chances is, that there is more radio listenership. An ambient listening travel companion is what we call it. Another thing that happened during the pandemic was that since people weren't getting into the cars and consuming mainstream radio, the internet guys got all excited and smelt a business opportunity. So people started recording motivational talks, recording what they call as podcasts, which literally means radio program on the internet, recording interviews with celebrities or meaningful people, recording snippets and books and putting them on the internet. And just like the video internet had OTT platforms like Netflix and Amazon Prime Video and Z5 and what have you, the proliferation of audio streaming platforms happened in India, which is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, JioSaavn, Amazon Prime Music. What did they do? They were also hit by the whole emergency of things, so they came to us. They came to radio stations and they said, look, you're sitting on hours and hours, thousands of hours of programming, whether it's an interview of Mr. Bachchan or Will Smith, or whether it's a motivational talk by Deepak Chopra or by Robin Sharma. You're sitting on mythological audio plays of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. Why don't you give it to us so that we can repurpose it and refashion it and put it on the internet on our streaming platforms? We loved it because it gave radio and radio programming an opportunity to get on the internet and, of course, much needed revenue, and who doesn't like revenue? Subsequently, streaming platforms got smarter. They said, why should we go to radio stations and get content and acquire content from them? Let's build our own studios and build our own programming. Now, let me tell you how beautifully India benefited from this. Because when the streaming platform said, let's start building our own content, private content creators went sniff, sniff, sniff. They smelled opportunity. And just like in the 90s, there was a massive influx of TV production houses there was the proliferation of audio production houses. People who gave employment to lakhs and lakhs of young and middle-aged and older people, started their own production houses, built audio content and continue to build audio content, and supplied it to these audio streaming platforms. And everybody, including FICCI, in their annual report, talks about the employment generated by the audio industry. And this, to me, is the resurgence of the audio industry. Lots also changed during the pandemic. Even though the government after the pandemic opened up institutions, opened up slowly, gradually, restaurants, public places, people were allowed to get out, things had changed. What did you do in terms of a communal activity? And by that I don't mean religion. Along with your community, what did you do? You went to your neighborhood joggers park, you had a running group, you had a yoga group, you had a laughter club, you chatted with people, your peers. If you're people elder than you, you'd say, hi auntie, hi uncle, chat about their families. All of that went through the door because the government had very clearly said, reopen but with isolation. Reopen but yet keep social distancing. Now then, who became your companion when you were alone in a park or a public place? You put on a pair of headphones or an earphone and you started reacting to, listening to, and communing with podcasts, audio shows. Because the beauty of audio is that it's ambient listening. You can continue whatever you're doing on the planet. You can cook, you can lift weights at the gym, you can take a walk, and the audio will always be your constant companion in the background. And that became almost like a necessity. Radio stations got proactive. And they said, hey, if they are able now to generate their own content and they're looking at private production houses and looking for cheaper deals, why don't we have our own platforms and create content for the internet and repurpose radio programs? Let me explain for the uninitiated what repurposing a radio program is. The radio format is 5 minutes of talk, you get a song, 5 minutes of talk, you get a song. Podcasts people enjoy as pure spoken content. So when you repurpose a radio program, you take out the songs, the ads, the promos, the special effects, and you put a line in here and there to seamlessly make it a talk show. So radio stations started creating their own online content. Radio stations created their own streaming platforms. And now when you go online, all of our programs, the moment we get off the air, because you don't want to put it on at the same time, otherwise who'll listen to the radio? The moment we get off the radio, is immediately converted into a podcast and it's available online for the world to hear. Somebody in Norway could hear my conversation with the Ministry of External Affairs and say, wow, that's what's happening in India. Somebody in Sri Lanka would listen to a cookery show and go, wow, how close it is to Lankan cooking. Now, it's also interesting for those of you who want to get into this, since a lot of you are students and parents of students, is that when you do an audio play or an audio thriller, you engage lots of voice actors. Somebody will, so if you, let's say you want to recreate Sherlock Holmes, or you want to recreate Byomkesh Bakshi for audio, you will get a voice to play Byomkesh or Sherlock Holmes. You'll get a voice to play Watson. You'll get a voice to play the murder victim. But in book reading, it's just one narrator. He narrates it, and whenever characters come in, like a police inspector or a housewife, yada, 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 he or she has to change his voice and modulate his voice. Which, ladies and gentlemen, we at India have in our genes. Because the moment we get out of our mother's womb, our mother's telling us stories, couple of hours later, our grandmother, grandfather, nana, nani, dada, dadi are already telling us stories. We love to hear stories. We love to tell stories. And we are the best at telling stories in the world. And the West is marveling at the kind of content that we're putting out. But foreign authors are calling in saying, are you the guy who did this? Are you the guy who did that? So can we collaborate? Remember, in a world filled with noise, meaningful noise or sound stands out. You can make yours count, all of you here. You can participate in the resurgence of radio or the resurgence of audio in a larger term. If you are a student, you can start a podcast on a topic you're passionate about, share stories, interviews, insights. If you're a teacher, educational and audio books are supplementing traditional learning, and it's all catering to auditory learners. Skill development. You can engage in audio projects. It hones communication, storytelling, and technical skills. And if you're looking at the social route, the social sector, the NGO, and doing good for society route, go to institutions like NAB, the National Association of the Blind, and read an audio book which they will record and play back to blind people so that they don't just have to use Braille, they can use audio. You don't have to be a professional voice. You just have to be a normal human being with a normal voice whose diction and pronunciation is decent. You can walk in and you can do your bit through audio for society. And the example that I'm quoting is absolutely real life. The NAB, National Association for the Blind, for example, has opened its doors. And they said, we're building an audio library. All our visually challenged people are loving it. Come on over. I'm going to sign off with another lyric, and this time I'm going to modify it for the modern era. Sir Cliff Richard, the much felicitated singer-songwriter, wrote these lines for a super hit song in the 80s again called Wired for Sound. And he wrote, I was a small boy who didn't like his toys. I could not wait to get wired for sound. Power from the needle to the static. AM, FM, I feel so ecstatic now. It's music I've found because I'm wired for sound. And here's the modern day Hrishi K version of that with apologies to Sir Cliff Richard. I was a small boy who didn't like his toys. I could not wait to get Bluetooth for sound. Power from the radio to streaming services, FM, podcasts, and audio books. I feel so ecstatic now. It's audio I've found, and I'm Bluetooth for sound. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.